you wanted this, you prayed for this, or we did. And so it's like you're living in a moment you prayed for, but you are so exhausted. You don't want to sound ungrateful. Our like slogan kind of became, we are wonderfully wild and Western. Our hands and our hearts are oh so full. Juggling all this is hard. It's not pretty, and it is harder more days than it is not. If something's important to you and you've got the right support system around you, like there's nothing you can't do. It's going to be hard, but if you'll just decide, like grit your teeth and be like, all right, we're going to do this, there's nothing you can't do.
Welcome to the Paintbrush Prairie podcast. I'm Kinsey Ashcraft, a boutique owner, firefighter wife, and mama of 2 cowgirls, homesteading on a cattle ranch in Oklahoma.
And I'm Talia, a Western artist and illustrator, mama of 2, and wife of a mountain man, raising babies in the mountains of Utah.
Together, we share a passion for the Western lifestyle, homemaking, and Indian paintbrush flowers.
We're here to inspire and encourage you as we each create a simple but beautiful life on the prairie.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Paintbrush Prairie, Season 4, all about telling your story. Today, we have a special guest. Dakota is a dear friend of mine, and I'm so excited to have her on the show today. Dakota is a small-town cowgirl with Southern roots, blazing a trail as a Midwest ranch wife, mama, and businesswoman. When she's not chasing kids at the practice pen or working with her retail partners as a key account manager at Area International, you can find her sharing stories of women that embrace the cowgirl state of mind on the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. She's a storyteller, waymaker, and purveyor of purpose that believes sales skills are life skills. Dakota is on a mission to help equip the go-getters in our Western and ag communities with the sales skills needed to be successful in the arena of life. Dakota, welcome to the Paintbrush Prairie, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed being a listener. So it's kind of like, wow, I get to be on the other end of this with you guys. So pretty great opportunity.
Yeah, well, I enjoy your show. I love it. But we're going to just jump right in. Like I said, this whole series and season is about telling your story. So why don't you tell us your story and give us your background? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the Western world? Just kind of give us a little history on yourself.
Sure. Well, it's always easier to ask people and hear their stories than to talk about yourself. I feel like when you're in that podcast host role, but this is great practice for me anyway. So I actually grew up in a small rural town in Alabama. That's, the accent never left. I've actually moved away from Alabama. It's been about 15 years ago now, but I take that Southern, upbringing with me everywhere I go, and just really grateful for the community and the people and the supporters that I had, and the opportunity to grow up in the Western way of life there. And that looks a lot different as far as I feel like the landscape of now that I live in Eastern Kansas. What feels Western out here, like a ranch that I live on with my husband now. I mean, we grew up on a small horse farm when I was growing up, and it's different in some ways, but at the same time, like I feel like the people are the same. It doesn't matter if you're from small town Alabama or out in the Midwest or all the way out in California, Nevada area. Like all the people I've met through my travels in the Western industry, for the most part, we all are operating, treating each other, living by the golden rule. And I just am so grateful for getting to grow up in, immersed in the Western lifestyle. So getting started, really, started out with horse shows. And once my parents figured out that I was actually going to stick with it, then started signing up as a local at some junior rodeos. And it's in the 5th grade when I started doing Alabama junior rodeo. And small short story, but basically for anybody listening and you're like, you're at that point where you're trying to figure out, like, are my kids really going to stick with this? Like whether it's horses or baseball or whatever. And you're like, there comes that point where you have to kind of financially make that next step, right? To really figure out if this is what you're going to do. And so the one piece of advice I'm just going to give everybody listening is don't ever trade a vacuum for a horse, thinking it's going to be the horse that's going to be a good kid safe junior rodeo horse. Because I'm living proof to say that that's not a good process. But that's a really, huge life lesson there. Because that first year of junior rodeo, and my dad he was always, buying and trading stuff, and he traded a rainbow vacuum cleaner for this beautiful papered quarter horse gelding named Cat's Alibi. And Cat was great until he wasn't. And he would break in two when you were least expecting it. And so, really, when, that pivotal shift, and I feel like the very first time I heard someone speak, the cowgirl state of mind into my life, I was at the Alabama Junior Rodeo Finals in Montgomery, Alabama. And I went in to make a goat tying run, and this horse broke in two at the timer line. And like I said, he wasn't one that bucked all the time, but when he did, you just weren't prepared for it. And so we bucked and bucked and bucked. And finally, I hit the ground. I rolled, got up and tied my goat. But I was so embarrassed. It's like my rookie year. And got my horse, did the walk of shame back to the barns. And my mom met me there. And her name was Pam. And she looked me over, first made sure I was okay. And then I will never forget her saying this to me. And I have it on a postcard now. Like, it just was one of the best life lessons. She said, life's too short for undependable men, or undependable horses, trucks, and men. And I was like, okay, and we sold that horse that summer. God bless the people that bought him at a sale. And then I actually got me, a horse that I could go be competitive on. And, really from that point forward, did junior high school, went on to college and rodeoed there, and did some amateur rodeos as well. So it's been one of those, very humble beginnings. You don't know what you don't know. I was fortunate. My mom knew horses, and, grew up running barrels and was all about horsemanship. But she had not had any experience on the other end of the arena as far as like roping. And that's where I found my true passion later in my journey. It was really kind of my senior year of high school, freshman year of college. I realized I loved that so much more. And at the time, could be so much more competitive without having to spend as much on a horse at the time. Now, that's not the case anymore. Breakaway horses are just as, much as a barrel horse these days. But so that's kind of how I got started. And, the Western industry, and did a little bit of, rodeo queen stuff throughout that time as well, which really all kind of married up with, I just have a love of connecting with people. And so being a rodeo queen gave me a lot of practice, getting in front of people, speaking to people, and really getting to learn more about their stories, and how we can connect, get more people to come in to learn more about the Western way of life and just rodeo in general.
That is so awesome. I love just listening to your story.
Well, thank you.
She's such a great storyteller, and I don't know if you want to get into this in a little bit, talking about your mom, Dakota.
Yeah.
But I know just you and I, when we've talked before, and just hearing your stories about your mom, and just your days like being a rodeo queen. I know Talia could relate with that, and she'd love hearing about that because y'all can kind of connect in that way. But just kind of some influences like on your upbringing and stuff. Like, can you dive more into that a little bit?
Absolutely. I love any opportunity I get to kind of share that hard-earned wisdom and knowledge, and then the women that have poured into me, women and men both. But now as a mom, and I know y'all can relate to this, I'm more aware than ever about how important it is with the friends that my husband and I have, because those are the people that will, be there to help us, come alongside of us to help us raise our children. And potentially, not that I'm wishing this, but in my case, I've seen it from the lens of being the child. That's, when your parent passes, and then it's like that group of people still circles around you to help kind of finish raising you, if you will, and to be there for those milestones. And so, and I'll always, still get emotional about this, but sorry guys, I'm going to cry a little bit, but that's
fine.
okay. That I've been wearing waterproof mascara for years. That's my life hack, everyday life hack. So just, it's going to be fine. But So my mom, she passed away. We were very, very close. And not in the, I want to preface this and say, like, not in she was my friend growing up, because she definitely was not that. Like, we operated in our household like fear of God, fear of Pam. Like, I knew, like, she was not there to be my friend. She was my mom first, but I was so fortunate that I did reach that point, and I think it's different for everybody, but I got to go through, her raising me in that way. And then I got a small glimpse of what it's like to then transition over to where you are an adult. You're living on your own. You start kind of figuring out, like, oh, maybe my mom did know what she was talking about, and get to have some of those friend like connections, and truly then consider your parent your friend. So, but my mom, in saying all that, she passed away unexpectedly when I was 27. And when I say unexpectedly, like, she was healthy, exercise, like, just no warning whatsoever. And she had a pulmonary embolism. And so it just caught us all off guard. I felt like my life had just taken off, and like I'd gotten the job I have now at Ariat, like really stepped into a sales role position. Like, all these things were like finally coming together. And I felt like I was a late bloomer in a lot of areas. Like, most of my friends had already gotten married or had kids, or they had like their dream career. And I just didn't have any of that yet. And so in the midst of that coming together, for my career, then I get a call that turns my world upside down, that my mom's passed away. And so um, through, really that, and my parents are divorced. I guess I should back up and say, like, it put me, and then I have two younger brothers, and it put us all in just this. You're never prepared for something like that. So we all just kind of had to stop where we were at the time. I was living in Oklahoma. My middle brother was living in Shreveport, and then my youngest brother was a senior in high school. And so whenever this happened, me and my middle brother, we really stepped into the kind of a co-sibling parenting role. Made the decision to let my youngest brother finish out high school. So my mom passed away in January, and my brother would graduate in May. And so there were just a lot of moving parts, and all of that, to kind of circle back to your original question, Kinsey, is we had so many people when we made the decision that Ariat, they actually let me keep my job, and I would fly out to Oklahoma and Kansas once a month to see my accounts. But for 6 months, I worked remotely in Alabama, servicing those accounts, and had some great support within the company. The fact that they even let me keep my job, I mean, I still think, what a miracle that was. In the big scheme of things, 6 months isn't that long of a time, but at that moment, it felt like, whoa, like they took a bet on me. They took a risk, because I was a brand new rep. I'll be forever grateful to them for that. But in that time, when we came back home, and my brother and I, all three of us, but we're stepping into these new roles. We're trying to figure out how to do life and pick up the pieces, and you're dealing with a mortgage that you're not prepared for, or debt, and I mean, just all the things, the stuff that I feel like a lot of times people don't talk about. And I don't think it's even a matter of trying to keep it private. I think it's just you get in survival mode when you're in that season, and you don't have any extra to give. Like, you were just trying to make it and make the best decision possible. And at that point, I was still, I was 27, but like, I was making some decisions. It was the first time in my life I was making decisions that I knew would affect other people besides me, like affect my brothers and stuff. And so having the friends, my mom's, cowgirl friends, as I call them, circle around us and really be wise counsel, and some of those, they had really had the gift of discernment, and other ones, might have been financial or legal advisors, where other ones were, the ones coming beside us and praying and making sure we had food for nourishment. Like, her friends showed up for us in every way I could have possibly imagined, and more. And I think that just really speaks to, and it's why I felt led to start the podcast, years later, was because these women like that truly want to give of their time, their energy, their resources, they shouldn't be a best kept secret. And I wanted to create a platform to where their stories could be heard for generations to come. Because on the flip side of that, I would have loved to have had recordings of like my mom's stories, and having
Mm.
her friends still be able to share that with them this day. Like there's so much value in that. It's healing in a lot of ways. And I can't say enough about those people. Some key ones that really stick out to me. Miss Nelda, and then there's Miss Barbara, Miss Tony, Leah, Maxine. Each of these ladies have had um, such huge influences on my life, and all in their own special way. But like Miss Nelda, I remember her telling me one time, she's like, you don't settle. Like you don't settle for less. And I mean, I was probably in the 4th grade when she told me that. We were sharing a Wendy's hamburger, and I'm like, this lady, like, she said, don't settle, and by George, we're not settling. And to put it even further in context, like I remember feeling so cool one time because I got to go with her and my mom, like on this 24-hour quick turnaround trip to go pick up this horse, and it was like the first girls grown up trip I got to go on, and so they're driving, and it's like, early in the morning, we're driving all night. Miss Nelda, she sees a Dunkin' Donuts sign, hot, fresh donuts or whatever. My mom's asleep in the back seat, and I'm sitting up there riding shotgun with her. And we whipped that trailer around, run a toll booth to go back and get some Dunkin' Donuts that morning. And I'm like, whoa, and she's like, we're not settling. We want donuts. We're going to turn around and go get some donuts. Like, just kind of that, go get them spirit. And then, having people there like Miss Barbara. I mean, I know that no matter what, she's going to catch me, when I fall. And then, my Aunt Steph, that's a whole nother part we could talk about. But, I've always called her my Aunt Steph, but she's my foster sister. My mom and her met through horses whenever my mom was young. And, that I think about, like, what a blessing these different people that were friends of my mom's, and like how different my life would look if she hadn't have been a cowgirl, how different my life would look if she hadn't have made these connections. And so I think in so many ways that, like, I care so deeply and I'm passionate about networking and connecting people and sharing their stories, because I got to like experience how powerful that could be in my own life when other people, did that for me.
That gives me chills. Oh, I love when you tell that story because it's just a good reminder to be that for someone else too, and for the
Yeah.
people in your life, and to really step up.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me share it. Like I said, there's so many stories, and the stories really are what, I think it's hard for people sometimes to know how to, unless you've walked through a season of losing someone. You don't ever wish that on somebody, but sometimes it's like people don't know how to act around you because they want to kind of handle you with kids' gloves in the best way. Like, people love and care about you, so they're like, should I bring somebody up? Is it going to make them upset? For me, I can't speak for anyone else, but again, it's very healing to have those friends still send me a text message and be like, man, I saw this and it made me think about your mom. Or for somebody to, say, you sound like there's a little bit of Pam coming out in you right there. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I sound like my mother, I hear it when I'm talking to my children now. But I just think that anytime we have an opportunity to share stories about our loved ones, or those things that maybe we don't think at the time are super meaningful. Like, we never realize the impact we're having on somebody else, I guess, is the short way to say it. What may just be like a fleeting moment for one of us, like, was an impactful moment for somebody with us potentially.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, obviously, I didn't have the privilege to meet your mom, but just from being your friend for these years and the stories that you've told me, like, I feel like I know her just because she's an extension of you, and you've kept her memory alive and you've talked about her. And I think that's so important because someone as special as your mom can have an impact on someone that they'll never ever meet. And so I love that you pour into your podcast and you share these cowgirl stories of women who have, grit and grace. And it's a great reminder, especially like if you're just listening doing chores or whatever, it's like, oh man, like I want to be more like Pam. Like Pam,
Yeah.
she's a cool gal. So
Oh, well, thank you. And I think that's what's I was so excited when you told me that you guys were gonna start a podcast, because it is like there's so much room. Like, I don't think there could ever be too many podcasts, honestly. I don't think we could ever share too many stories, because there's just a lot of people out there, and we're all gonna relate to something differently. So I think it's great what y'all are doing as well.
Well, everyone has their own flavor, right?
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
it's kind of like, I always frame it like art, right? Like, there's never going to be like too many artists in the world. Everyone has their own style. So,
Yeah.
I feel the same way with podcasts.
Absolutely.
Oh, man, I'm so touched by that story, that you were able to like have such good connections with all of those ladies, and that they were just so like genuine and just wanted to support you. And I think that's just like, it's like making me tear up, because
yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's so much, like within women, there's just so much like competition and strife. And everyone's just like trying to outdo each other, when that's not what it should be about. It should be about trying to raise each other up, and to have connections, and to create these friendships. And that's kind of why I love like what we're doing here, where we're having different guests on our podcast, because we're getting to know these ladies. And I feel like once we kind of establish these relationships, it's like you just made a new friend, right? And it's just like you're kind of like building your little group around you, even if they live 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
It's like you still have that, like those people like have your back. So it's really
Absolutely.
special. So, let's have you tell us a little bit about kind of like what your life is now. Like, tell us a little bit about your family and your life and where you live and all that.
Yeah. So I'll kind of back up to, I said that, and that was in 2015 when my mom passed away. That was in January, and literally the worst moment of my life. I mean, just my world completely turned upside down. And then by the end of that year, because this is truly just like a God restoration story, by the end of that year, and not just a minute too soon. I mean, we're talking about like within 2 weeks of December 31st, I met my now husband. And so I don't think it was any coincidence, the timing in that. At that point, I had moved back. I moved back to Oklahoma in like June of that year, and my now sister-in-law, which Kinsey, I know you know, Ayla. It's just wild how, again, going back to being a cowgirl, growing up in the rodeo industry and stuff, you're all connected somehow. And so, Ayla, I knew her, and I knew, my now brother-in-law, Trenton, from rodeo and at IPRA rodeos when I lived in Oklahoma. But I had no idea that Trenton had a brother, Tyler. The one year he was supposed to IPRA rodeo, he broke his arm. And so then like he didn't go anywhere that year. And so I just never met him. But back to my kind of chronological order of the story. So Ayla had started reaching out to me and was like, "Hey, I've got somebody I want you to meet, my brother-in-law." And I was just like, "No, this was back in like July of that year." And I was like, "No, like I'm just trying to get my life together. Like I just am not ready for any of that." And I guess I should say too, I'd had a long relationship that had ended in 2014, and it didn't end based on me wanting it to end. It and again, it was God's blessing, but like I was in this place where I was like, I don't want to get hurt again. Like I've just went through a lot. I've lost my mom. I'm picking up the pieces, and I just need some time. And so anyway, finally, by the end of the year, I had agreed. I was like, "That's fine, Ayla. Just give him my phone number." So I meet my husband now, like December 17th of 2015, and the joke is that we met. I drove up here to Kansas. That's a whole nother story in itself. But didn't know a soul other than Trenton and Ayla. I drive up here, and they pretty much never. I never left. I mean, I moved up here to Mound City 5 months later. all of my really close friends, they were just like, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is the right move?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It'll be fine," because in my mind, like we weren't moving in together. I wasn't changing jobs because I had Kansas and Oklahoma as my territory, and so I was like, "It'll be fine." I was like, I mean, I was so confident. Like I hated it when people used to say this to me, but I experienced it. Like when you know, you know. And so I knew that like Tyler was it. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to move to southeastern Kansas. And within 5 months of us meeting each other, and I did. And we dated for a year and about a year and a half, and then got married. But it it all seemed like, I think for other people it was happening kind of fast, but it felt nothing felt fast about it for me. I guess it just felt very natural. Um, and again, he was like, "Well, you never really left. I mean, I didn't have a choice." I was like, "Well, I'm so glad that worked out. You know, you just had to marry me because I wouldn't leave." But he's got a great sense of humor. But fast forward, we've been married. This May will make 7 years, and we have two little boys, 5 and 2, Monroe and McCrae. And so we're in what I feel like is the pretty part of Kansas where we still have a lot of trees and still have a lot of wind, but trees, and it's just looks similar to the Ozarks. And so we have a feeder calf operation here, and Tyler handles the day-to-day responsibilities of that. My role right now is because I have a full-time job at Ariat. Really how I help is when we're shipping cattle, I do my best to be there and have breakfast sandwiches for everybody that help. And I help as much as I can and try to make sure me and the boys are there just to do the everyday things, like go put out silage and help feed hay and those kind of things in the evenings, because those are really the moments that I find myself kind of like wanting to pinch myself. Like, these are the moments I prayed for. And that's the role I'm getting to be right now. And then I'm our bookkeeper. So, come tax time, which is now, I'm about ready to pull my hair out when we're doing all that. But that's what my role looks like right now as a ranch wife. And I try to be really transparent in sharing that, because for a while I felt a little bit like I wasn't worthy of that ranch wife label, because I'm not out there every day feeding calves or doctoring or getting to ride my horse. Like, that's not what that role looks like for me. And then I just decided, you know what, like, I'm going to spit the bit on this. Like, there's not a one size fits all for a ranch wife title. Like, it takes all kinds of kind.
Absolutely.
We all have different roles. So I try to share what mine looks like in this season. And you know what? I'm sure it'll change, as time goes on. But that's what it looks like right now. And I'm really content, and like I enjoy this role I get to play in supporting my husband, because I never dreamed that I would be part of a feeder calf operation. That wasn't ever something I thought of as a child or even a young woman. But I can't imagine working towards a common goal of doing anything else now.
I just love how your story, just how it all worked out, like you said, like God's timing. And I know you talked a little bit about like your in-laws and the role that your mother-in-law plays in your life. And it's just like, it gives me chills just thinking about it and just how it all worked out and doing what you're doing now. It's awesome to see.
Yeah. Well, and I want the listeners to know, like, sometimes when you go, God, like, I need a sign. Like, is this really as good as it seems or whatever? So two, like, very apparent, like, okay, God, and I call them God winks, but I'm like, I got you, God wink over here. I see you. I know this is happening. So I didn't know Tyler's mom and dad or anything, obviously. And so that first weekend I came up here, it was I met Tyler at his 30th birthday party. So not only was I coming up and meeting my future husband, I was meeting like all of his friends, his parents,
all
the
the
whole
fam.
thing, the whole fam. And whenever I walked in the door, sat down my stuff, and Pam, that's his mom. So we both have a mom named Pam. And she, gave me like the biggest hug, welcomed me. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And then, the house that we live in is the house that, Tyler's dad grew up in, and it was actually like up for rent. Whenever shortly after I moved up here, they didn't renew a lease for some hunters, and anyway, the property became available for me to rent, and so I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and now I live on Montgomery Road. And so there were and there were other things as well that were like, okay, but just kind of, I just had such a peace about it. And then the first time I remember my grandparents coming up here to visit that 4th of July, my pawpaw, he was like, I get it now. Like I understand. And I was like, okay, so yeah.
When you get approval from Pawpaw, then it's like,
that
seals the deal.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
For sure.
It did. It was one of those deals where I was like, I better mind my P's and Q's because he'll keep Tyler before he keeps me. They hit it off as well. And that's like the best feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just kind of talked about your cattle operation and your boys. How do you balance all of that while also working for Ariat? Because I know that you're a key account manager, and that's a pretty big role in the company. You've kind of worked your way up the ladder. So
Yeah.
what does your life look like with that big, I guess you could call it corporate job, but you're also able to work remotely too?
Mm-hmm. I came up with this phrase after we had our son Monroe, because there's nothing like when people come up and ask you after you've had a kid, you hadn't quite had enough sleep, like you're running on coffee, dry shampoo, the whole 9 yards. And they're like, so how are things going? Like how, and you don't ever, because again, like you wanted this, you prayed for this, or we did. And so it's like you're living in a moment you prayed for, but you are so exhausted. You don't want to sound ungrateful when somebody asks you that. And so Tyler and I was like, you know what? Our like slogan kind of became, we are wonderfully wild and Western. Our hands and our hearts are oh so full. And it's just like stuck. And it's really kind of become my theme as well, because I'll just be honest, like juggling all this is hard. It's not pretty, and it is harder more days than it is not. So it has nothing to do. I think we get to choose our hard. And I just choose, like, I feel, very called, in, like, I've always wanted to be a wife and a mother. And that is my number one, priority. But I also feel like God's equipped me with skills and allowed me to, he's put me in a position in this company that has just an incredible reach. I mean, Ariat is a global brand, and I have worked my way, into different positions in the company. I've been there over a decade now. I did some contract work for Ariat before I ever went to work for him full time. So I really kind of taken all that in. I've been with him for about 14, 15 years at this point, and I also feel like God's using me. Yes, I help sell, shirts and pants, and I've sold boots over the years, but I really look at it more as like that's kind of my ministry field right now. I mean, I get to come in contact with a whole lot of people doing what I do. And while it's hard, I mean, it is such a juggle. And I get up early, and thankfully, I'm wired to where I can run on pretty little sleep. I mean, I don't try to make that a habit, but I just genuinely, I don't require as much sleep as my husband does. But I just think that, when it comes to balance, I don't really believe in balance. I feel like in order to do things, I think about what I should be doing with my kids when I'm having to be away and travel for work. And when, I'm having to cut out early one day to, go to all the doctor's appointments and do all the things with my kids, then I feel like, oh, am I not doing enough of my work today? Like, it's an internal battle no matter what.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the real difference, and circling back to just the people you surround yourself with, I've been so fortunate at Ariat. I've been around not just like great, women that are great at sales or great at their job, but they're tremendous leaders, and they also have this desire to, God first, family second, career third. And so really being able to watch women like that in leadership positions, surround myself with those women over the years, it's made me realize, like, if they can do this, then I can do it too. And they've been willing to, like, I don't believe in a handout, but I like believe in, giving a leg up. And I've had so many women do that for me within area. So it's made me, it, I guess, like, I enjoy the challenge of trying to navigate all of it. And it's also given me a set of business skills that I just, if there was one thing I'd say I had a regret about my life is I started, I'm always about finishing things. And I started my master's in business. Like, I graduated college, and then it was a terrible time to be trying to get a job or whatever. This was in 2009. And so I had like a semester essentially between when I graduated college and then when I was going to go run for Miss Rodeo USA in January. And I mean, nobody wants to hire you when you're like, oh, well, I need a job for 6 months, but I'm not sure if I win this and what I'm going to do afterwards. So anyway, I started my master's in business, and I did that for that semester, but I never went back and finished it. And I'll say, who knows if I'll, go and actually complete that at some point. But I feel like the business lessons that I've learned from being in this industry and around people in a corporate environment, all of those skills and lessons have translated over into my personal life and helping me do things like knowing how to use Excel proficiently when I go to roll up the books for our cattle operation. And like, there's just so many things that I can vividly see now that it's not this or that. Like, they very much can marry together, and they work for us. So,
yeah.
Another thing you asked me earlier, Kinsey, is, my mother-in-law, I'd be remiss to say if I didn't bring her up. So when I first, we found out I was pregnant, and we'd been married about a year and a half. But at that point, I had more of my sales job at that point in area. I was a road warrior. I mean, I was traveling minimum 3 days a week, but typically, leave on a Monday night, get back on a Thursday night. And whenever, found out I was pregnant, everybody's first question is like, well, what are you going to do for work? Like, they all just kind of thought I was going to quit my job. And that probably is the normal thing, that you think of. But we figured it out. And just my mother-in-law traveled with me on the road whenever we had Monroe, and he went with me, till he was 8 months old, and then had the opportunity to have she helped take care of him when I was on the road with our second son, McCray. And I had we called her a cowgirl nanny. She traveled with me until McCray was 6 months old. And I just think you figure it out. Like, if something's important to you and you've got the right support system around you, like, there's nothing you can't do. It's going to be hard, but if you'll just kind of decide, like, grit your teeth and be like, all right, we're going to do this. Cause the bigger picture, vision matters the most, then there's nothing you can't do.
I think that's such a important message, right? Because it can apply in so many different, I guess, like, states that people are in, right? Because, there might be people who, like, that's truly what they want to do is just, like, be a mom and just mom, and, like, that's, like, their bread and butter. And then there's people that, like, they want to work full time, and that's, like, what makes them happy, and but they still want to be a mom and be able to do all the things with their family too. And then there's all the people in between that want to dabble and do a little bit of both, like me and Kinsey, right? And so, but I just think I think, like, what you said there is, like, if you want to do something, like, you're just you can figure it out. Like, you can figure out how to make it work. And it's not, I love that you also mentioned, like, it is hard and it doesn't look pretty. Like, I think that's the hardest thing that we deal with, especially with, like, sharing your life online, is people make assumptions about your life and, like, how things are. It's like, if you actually knew, like, what a crap show it can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And I think that's where too,
be...
like, Talia, like, the relatability, I feel like it gives people, I mean, not that we're just trying to, like, be like, okay, I'm the chaos coordinator, this is my circus and all my monkeys with me. But I do think, like, there's a certain relatability there when we can be vulnerable and just be like, kind of those walls come down, and it's like, this is hard, but it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It's just hard.
Mhm.
Right. And it's the life that you're choosing. And like I think that's if you're choosing it and you're being intentional about it and you're like, no, this is the way I want to do it and this is how we're doing it, like then you'll be fulfilled, right? Like
Yeah.
I think it's when you're feeling like you have to do something and you don't want to do it and you're constantly like fighting it, that's when there's
Mhm.
like this major like disconnect and you're feeling so resentful or whatever. And so, I just, because it's like sometimes I always have those moments where I'm like, man, I should just quit everything and just mom, that's all. I'll just do that. That's good.
Yeah.
And then Cody's like, are you serious? Like my husband, he's like, you would be so mad. Like you'd be so miserable because like I love to create. And so it's like I can't not do those things because I need both in my life, right? Like I
Right.
need to, do all the family things and the homemaker things, but I also need to create and do those things. But it is difficult. And especially when you have little ones, like my kids are very similar ages to yours. And so it's like, it's challenging, but you just make it work and it looks messy, but
Yeah, well, and I think you brought up a really good point there too, because it's, for years, it's like I did feel a little bit like a rat on a hamster wheel or whatever. Like this was our every week. It's like you come home, you wash clothes, you repack, you're taking stuff on the road. And while I loved what I did, there came a point to where I was like, okay, I still want to stay with this company. I still want to use the skills that like I've honed in on, but I want to grow, and I want to find something that's a little bit better fit for my family. And so I think just having somebody here that like being open to, you can kind of stay that same path if you want to lean into like your creativity, or if like your business skills and stuff, you can still do that, but it may take a different shape. And like that's where right now I'm almost at the 2-year mark where I've been in this key account rep position, and all of the things that I did at Ariat, from the time I started as contract labor to being a merchandiser to a road warrior sales rep in an independent territory, like all of those things have given me a skill set and really an understanding of, like, now when I'm sitting at a desk, I call myself a desk jockey. I still fly, and go some places, but like my role looks very different. I'm looking at Excel spreadsheets and on Zoom most days, all day. And but this is a much better fit for my family now, So it's like the trade off is, I no, I'm not, sightseeing and burning up the road and stuff now, but instead, like, I can walk my kid across to pre-K from daycare on my lunch break because I'm actually home and working from home, and I'm still getting to fulfill this role that I feel like I, add value to my customers and our company at Area. It's stuff I'm passionate about. I feel like the product that I'm helping sell helps end consumers do their job, and do it well. But it's taken a different shape the past couple of years because it really, it was so hard. It was like, okay, how do we transition this into like another phase, but still make it work?
Mhm.
We've been friends for some time, Dakota, and I know that we share a mutual love for junk. This is kind of a tangent
Yeah.
of what we've been talking about, but I saw your story today, or maybe it was your Facebook post about Junk on the Prairie, which I'm
Yeah.
dying to go to. So tell our listeners a little bit about your side gig, because I love what y'all do.
Yeah, yeah. So I've always had a love for junk, and I think junk and like thrifting and secondhand stuff, and really kind of comes from two main people. So my mom and then my Pawpaw Robin, who I mentioned earlier, and I just have like the best childhood memories, and even into adulthood of just like going on the hunt with them, looking for things and going to auctions, and like it was such an experience, like I have the best memories around that. And then just having an eye and a knack for finding stuff that I feel like I can imagine other people wearing, or that it's really going to bless their life and they're going to be able to do it on a budget. And so what the past few years, this opportunity came up in Mound City, where my husband and I live. And we have a big arts and crafts festival here every year in August. And my sister-in-law, Ayla, and I, we set up a booth back in 2017, like, pre-babies, all the things, and had the best time. It was really a Western vibe, thrifted, kind of redone furniture, secondhand clothes, that kind of thing. And so we did that, and then took a break for a few years. And then in 2020, when COVID hit, they didn't have the arts and crafts festival, but there are a lot of antique stores and junk stores kind of in this area that they really depend on that event each year to help them, make their numbers. And so some of the ladies that own those shops got together, and they were like, hey, what if, trying to stay within the rules and orders of that time period of, social distancing, they're like, they created this event called Junk on the Prairie. And I had a bunch of junk from all my thrifting, and Tyler agreed to let me use like the center of our barn to just set it up. And I was a stop for Junk on the Prairie. And that year it was me and like two other ladies. I was like, hey, you've got handmade pottery and you have quilts, like come and just set up. Let's just set up, put our stuff out. And we had so much fun that first year that every year since, we have been a stop for Junk on the Prairie. And what I call my style is, soul gravy style. And really it's just where, like my cowgirl roots and my love for traveling and vintage all come together, just kind of collide. That's what I, call it, is that soul gravy style. And I enjoy, merchandising and making things feel like a true experience. So that's what we do once a year. I have this kind of pop-up shop in the center of our barn, and it's grown. So I've actually got 6 other women-owned businesses that'll be here this weekend. And so honestly, it's just like such a passion project of mine, and it gives me a creative outlet as well to bring people together, to gather and create, again, a sales experience that's a positive sales experience for, these people out and about. So
that sounds amazing. I wish I could come.
Well, we'll just have to start. It'll be the first weekend in April. They've decided going forward, it'll be that every year. So we just need to, get it put on the books and have one the first week of April.
It reminds me of Antiques Week at like Round Top. I love that y'all are doing that.
Yes, I actually just got back from a girls' trip in Round Top. I met my grandparents. I met my grandma and my aunts and cousins from Alabama down there, and it was amazing. I can't recommend that enough. Like, if you need a sign to plan your next girls' trip, like we planned it for a year almost. I mean, it was like 11 months ahead, but Round Top was just outstanding. It was so much fun, and there is no shortage of junk for all price ranges. Like, it is just like the coolest place.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have to make my way out there and do like some vintage, like thrift shopping out there, because it's just slim pickings around here. And like, it seems like you guys have like the mother load out in that part of the country.
Does that mean we're like hoarders? I wonder, like that we have so much stuff. So we're like borderline hoarders that we're just passing it around.
Well, I think there's just like there's a lot of history in that part of the country. And I feel like just for some reason, like people just like they hang on to stuff and they like treasure it and value it. And I don't know, it's like, just seems like all the good stuff is out there.
Yeah, but my husband's supportive of me having this once a year, because he's like, well, basically you're like supporting your habit to go buy junk. You buy junk to flip junk. And I was like, you're right. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yes.
All right. So if our listeners haven't already been able to tell, you are a great storyteller. And you have your own podcast called Cowgirl Confessions. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about that and what inspired you to, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but kind of go into more detail about why you started that?
Sure. So the Cowgirl Confessions podcast, I really had no intention of ever having a podcast, but I'd have that name and really the tagline, Navigating Careers, Cowboys, Kids, and Cattle. I had known since 2008 that like I wanted to write a book, and I wanted it to be set up like a chicken soup for the soul type book. And I still, that's on the bucket list. Excuse me. and part of the plan. But I just had that idea and just sat with it for a long time. And then, even after my mom passed away, I didn't start the podcast until September of 2020 is when the first episode aired. And in the meantime, I had a couple of friends that I would say we were kind of in a mastermind group together, if you will. Like they were in the process of writing books at that time. And they knew I wanted to write a book. So we were just brainstorming and stuff. And my friend Jenna, she was like, and I had a small, Monroe he was just over a year old at this point. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to write this book. Like, I just can't even imagine. And she's like, well, you just need to start a podcast now so that when you do write the book, you'll have an audience that wants to buy the book. And I'm like, oh yeah, like it sounded great in theory, but then I was just like, oh, a podcast I went to school for broadcast journalism, but like, it wasn't something I knew. And it seemed a little bit overwhelming. And, she said it, and then lo and behold, like the next day, she was like, hey, check your email. I set up your account on Anchor, and you need to start recording your podcast. I'm like, well, all right. I guess I'm going to have a podcast. So anyway, that's kind of how the podcast actually came to be. But the whole idea behind it is going back to, I've seen what a difference having the cowgirl state of mind makes in somebody's life. And as I got older and I was in all these different settings, whether it was corporate America or church or at a rodeo, I would meet different women and I would think one or two things. And this is still the case. I would be like, this woman has the cowgirl state of mind. Or I'd see somebody and meet somebody and be like, she needs the cowgirl state of mind. She hasn't had the privilege of being around people that embrace that and share that. And so it just became very, very, apparent to me that like, that's what the mission of the podcast needed to be, is sharing the cowgirl state of mind. And the way you can do that is through people's stories. And I didn't want it to be, people ask me oftentimes, and I've had guests on the show that they don't own a horse. They didn't grow up in the Western lifestyle. And that's okay because, it goes back to that Dale Evans quote of, cowgirl state of mind is a special brand of American courage. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a bull rider, an astronaut, a stay-at-home mom, or working at your local Winn-Dixie. Like, it doesn't matter. The cowgirl state of mind is something we can all have and embrace. And so, I really enjoy having people that they wouldn't necessarily call themselves a cowgirl, but they absolutely understand, appreciate, and value the cowgirl state of mind. And so, yeah, that's really, how the podcast got started and what we're all about. I mean, we're just on a mission to share the cowgirl state of mind with women across the globe. So
I love that. Like I said, I really enjoy listening to your show and just hearing all of the stories. It's a good one. We'll be sure to link it up in our show notes too, so our listeners can go hop over there and follow your show as well.
Thank you.
So kind of moving in that same vein, but what are some of your big life goals? It could be with your podcast, but it could also be like on your ranch, working in corporate. Where do you see yourself and your family maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Where would you like to be?
Yeah, I am a planner at heart. You could ask my husband and he'll tell you, like, to the extreme, like, I do like to plan because I believe, like, if you don't, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. But I'm also learning that it's so much better if I just, have open hands about, what God wants to do and how he wants to use me. Because there's been moments where I'm like, oh, he's like probably laughing at me again, trying to think that I'm going to plan all this out and it's going to go my way. So, truly, Kinsey, I'm open. I'm in a really good season. And I say that in a humble way because I've lived through some really hard seasons. And I know that, like, where I'm at right now, it's a really good place to be. We're healthy. We're both getting to do things that we love and enjoy, both my husband and I, and we got a great church family. And so really, what our key focus is like, I just want to raise good humans. I want to, raise humans that love Jesus, and I want to be able to be like his hands and feet, however he wants to use me. If that's me being in corporate America for another 10 years and I retire and doing a side hustle, with the podcast and and teaching people about sales, or if that's me moving into a different role. I don't know what that would look like, but I'm open to it, and really I'm trying not to plan as much, even though that's kind of my nature.
Yeah, I feel like when you're a determined woman, like you are,
Yes.
we tend to we have this tendency to want to just okay, I'm gonna do this, and then it's gonna be like this, and then it's gonna happen. This is gonna happen, and try to just plan everything out. And God has a really good way of showing you that you don't get to do that.
No, he sometimes it's a gentle nudge, and sometimes it's like, whoa, like he's done put a pork bit on me and sat me down. Like, I mean, it's an abrupt halt. So, yeah.
Obviously, being a mom and having your little boys is really important to you, and family is just a very, very big priority. What are some foundations that you and your husband have instilled within your home?
We work really hard when it comes to, time together, to where we're unplugged, and the kids are our focus. And I'm not going to say we get it right all the time, but we try really hard to make that time, even if it's just all four of us crammed in a single cab feed truck, or if it's, going to church on Sunday mornings and just not making plans for Sunday afternoon. I'm one of these people that'll just try to fill our schedule to the brim. I mean, because I'm like, well, we could do this and we could do that. But really working hard to be like, that's our time, our Sunday afternoons, and stuff, that's our time to just be, go fishing, go just go to the practice pen, spend time outside, or what, maybe take a nap if we need a nap. That's what that's what that time needs to be. So really, setting those, getting on the same page, I would say, about what those healthy boundaries are. And I think that probably ebbs and flows, in any marriage. It's taken me a while to get to that point, especially, with us having two small children. Because I'm just go, go, go all the time naturally, but really set some of those healthy boundaries around what that we want that to look like. And then, saying prayers, before we eat dinner, before bedtime, and letting our boys, get comfortable doing that. So that's been really important to us. And then one of the things that I enjoy doing with our boys every morning, it doesn't matter what kind of morning we're having, but we do this, and it's so cool now because we've been doing it for, I'd say, close to a year now. But we do affirmations, and most of the time, it's me looking at them in the rearview mirror on the way to daycare, and I'm like, all right, let's go through our affirmations. And I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm important, Jesus loves me, I like these things, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And so just some of those little everyday things that you don't think maybe you're making that big of an impact on your marriage or on your family, but then you realize your kid reminds you when you didn't, hey, we didn't say the prayer, or hey, we didn't do our affirmations, or those kind of things. That's those are just a few that first come to mind. And I'll be real honest, Tyler and I, we have not figured out how you get a date night in, once a month or any of that. That's an area where we need work, we need improvement. But I feel like we get those kind of quiet moments, right before our head hits the pillow at night and stuff. But that is one area that we could use some work.
Well, I'm with you there. We just fit in our little side conversations whenever we can.
Yeah.
It's I was like, when was the last time we went to dinner? And we're like, oh, I don't know, 6 months ago.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. It's really when you have such little kids, sometimes it's we're just trying to keep our heads above water, and it's
Mm-hmm.
we'll have time later. I mean, it's I think you fit it in when you can, even if it's when you're sitting outside and the kids are busy playing, you can have a conversation and still have some connection time.
Yeah. And I think, that's to each their own, like, but for us, even though we're not getting a scheduled date night, once a week or once a month or whatever, like we're still getting that time together, and we're on board with, this is how we want to spend our time. This is how we want to prioritize it. And we're doing that together. May not just be him and I, the kids are with us or whatever, but that I'm okay with that. Like I just feel like we're still on common ground. We're still working towards the same thing.
So I know that you had mentioned this a little bit on our questionnaire, but can you tell us about your Kickstart guide on securing and retaining sponsorships? I know that you've created this amazing, thorough guide that is available on your website. And I just wanted our listeners to know a little bit more. It might be something that would interest them. And we'll be sure to link that also in our show notes too.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that, Kinsey. So I created this guide. It's been something that honestly stemmed from me wishing I had a sponsorship roadmap, if you will, because um, I think I'm a salesperson at heart. I've been selling stuff since I was like 5 years old, and for our local walkathon and junior rodeo ads and things like that. But whenever I stepped into my role as Miss Rodeo USA back in 2010, it's a whole next level. You're not just selling personal sponsorships or something to generate money for your school. I was representing, two national organizations and then the body of people within both of those organizations. And it was, so you've got national sponsors you're working with, and like there was just a lot there where I wished I had a lot of people that poured into me and shared things with me, but I really just wished I'd had a roadmap that like said, this is what you do this is kind of how you go start to finish with your communication, how you can never over communicate basically, and then the follow up piece. And so over the years, so from being on that side of it as somebody that was like still asking for sponsorships and having that one-on-one connection with sponsors, to then moving into, a corporate America type position that, area it's well known in the Western industry, and watching my retailers navigate sponsorship opportunities in their communities, watching us do it on a bigger level as a company. And then moving into the role, that I have now too, where I have people asking like, if I will sponsor things or if the podcast will sponsor things. And through all of that, I realized that a lot of the things I've picked up along the way, and that other people that are well versed in sponsorship and sales, because they go hand in hand, in order to be successful with sponsorships, you have to have sales skills, just a fundamental base there. And I realized that people like mistakes that were happening and wires that were getting crossed, like people weren't doing it intentionally, but it was costing them sponsorships. It was costing them partnerships. It was, just taking stuff that didn't have to turn out that way. And if they'd have just done this, and I kept seeing this happen over and over. And I was like, you know what? I need to just create this. Nobody else has done it. And I just felt like there was an opportunity to serve, people that really wanted to do this right, that have a desire to learn. And so what I did is I put together, it's a guide that walks you through. It's like a five steps, if you will. It's an 80-page guide. So, I mean, there's a lot of information in there, but it was important to me to create something that it's like you hand it over and you go to work, because I want the people that are the go-getters. That's who this is for. Like, I'm not going to go sell the sponsorship for you. That's not what this is. This is for somebody that has a desire to learn and be equipped with these sales skills that ultimately they're life skills. They're going to help you in every other area of your life. And so I created the guide, but then there's also a private podcast that goes along with the guide, because I'm the kind of person like consuming stuff via audio is how I can consume it the fastest. But then I can go back and take what I've learned and, like put it into practice. And so I feel like what makes the guide a little bit, different than anything else that might be out there too, is that I've always been able to tie, like, if I'm trying to learn something or retain something, if I can tie it back to a horse, it's like it sticks with me. And so, like, a lot of the analogies that I use, teaching in this guide reference back to that. And so, just for instance, like the whole kind of concept is like, it's broken into 5 parts. And so there's groundwork, then you go to the round pen, then you saddle up to sell, then you're entered up, and then you're headed home. And so it really is taking, again, that cowgirl state of mind, my sales skills, and kind of culminates into this, roadmap to sponsorships. And my goal is that at the end of the day, I love and appreciate this Western industry like so much. And I want to equip people in our Western industry and ag industries too. But like, I want to equip them with the skills to where we all win. Because if we all are improving on our skill set and we're getting better at communicating and we're following up with that sponsor and we're giving them their, hey, this is your ROI on what you gave me last year. Would you like to partner again? And they get even better exposure. We all win. And right now, I'd say those type of conversations that I'm a part of and sponsorship things I've seen, there's less of that you hear about. And there's more of, well, somebody didn't follow through or they didn't do this or that. And so I really hope that this God, will get in the hands and the ears of the people that are hungry and want to, learn those skills, and it can make a difference in our Western industry overall.
For sure.
That's awesome. I mean, I haven't really ever been like on that side of it, like getting sponsorships or anything, but I think now I'd like that I hear you explain it. I'm like, I need to look into that. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just so applicable to so many other areas of life too. I mean, hearing you talk about it, you could apply it to almost anything, whether that you're a blogger or homesteader, you're in sales, whatever. It's a good tool to learn about communication and following
is.
in.
And I think one of the things I think back on like my sales journey, if you will, my sales girl journey, and it all really began because my earliest memory of selling is sitting down at our kitchen table with my mom and my dad taking turns, and I would getting on an old rotary phone, spinning the number. They'd tell me what number to, put in, and I was calling and asking people to pledge me for our walkathon at school. And so basically, hey, it's 13 miles. If I walk all 13 miles, will you give me $1 a mile? It's this whole thing. And so I went through that. Like back then, there weren't cell phones. There were bag phones and stuff. There wasn't social media, but like they took the time to like let me do the work. They helped me. Obviously, I'm 5. I'm not writing out what somebody pledged me on my pledge sheet. My parents were doing that for me, but like they put me in a position to be the one selling, to picking up the phone. And how ingenious. I mean, who's going to tell a 5-year-old, no, I'm not going to give you money to go walk? I mean, they knew what they were doing. But there were so many moments like that throughout my childhood where, it was time to sell junior rodeo ads. You know what? My mom would pull up in front of Moncrief Telephone Cooperative or Parkman Cattle Company, and she'd put me out and send me with the ad book, and I had to go ask. Like I had to get good at doing that. And so I think, this God isn't just for, your rodeo athlete that's going to amateur rodeos or your rodeo committee person. Like my goal is that for that kid that's, 6 years old, or, a parent that sees it, like they want to do it and they want to do it right, that they take this God and they start applying that, and they give their kids an opportunity. You don't get these skills without having to actually practice them. And I feel like that's one thing. I don't think people do it, again, on purpose, but we live in such a busy day and age. People are like, well, let me just send you this. Hey, my kid's selling this. Would you buy this wrapping paper? Will you buy these trash bags? And like the kid never gets the opportunity to be the one that shares it. And I'm not giving parenting advice here. I just want to fully disclose that. I'm just saying from my perspective, that helped me become a saleswoman that I am today. And I think I know this God can do the same thing if our younger generation is given the opportunity to step into that role.
But like you say, it can apply not only to like, your different, I guess, like job titles, right? Like blogger, influencer, whatever, but like actually even just different areas of your life. Like, even just if you're an employee to someone, like you are selling your skills and yourself, right? Like you
Yeah.
want them to keep you around or get, if you're trying to get a job or anything like that. I think all of these things can apply.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be sure to link that in our show notes for our listeners, because I think that is just such a wonderful tool to have in your toolbox, no matter what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate y'all, your vote of confidence in it and understanding the mission and the goal behind it, because, sometimes people, and I'm sure y'all get this, but it's like, what did you really need to do one more thing? And it's like, well, it's like sometimes like you can't ignore when you feel like you're called to do something. And I'm not just using that as a blanket statement, but it's like when you have that, still small voice that just will not go away. And it's like, you should do this, even when it's not convenient, even when you don't necessarily need one more thing on your plate. You just figure out how to do it, and you hope and pray that it's gonna get in the hands of the right people and serve those people. Because there was a reason you heard that still small voice telling you to go do that. And I think that goes for any of us, whether it doesn't matter what we're doing, like we don't need to ignore that. If we feel like God's calling us to serve in a certain capacity. And for some people, it may be a digital guide. Other people, it's, through art or through, your store, Kinsey. Like it can look really different in how we do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I see it as like you're not keeping your gifts to yourself. You're utilizing your God-given talents and skills and blessing other people with those.
Yeah.
Well, Dakota, before we move on to our rapid fire questions, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
This is a great podcast. You'll need to share it with all your friends. Go back and listen to their episodes from the beginning and just show them some love, because it takes a lot of work and energy to be a podcast host, producer, creative, all the things. So y'all just show these gals some love, because it's no small feat what they're doing.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So at the end of every show, we try to do 10 rapid fire questions. They're really lighthearted, super fun, just to kind of get to know a little bit more about you. So we'll dive right in. Question number 1 is, what are you reading right now?
Gosh, I have like multiple books started. I'm that girl.
I am too. It's okay.
Yeah. But I'm actually going to turn around and grab so I've just started the Breakthrough Code. My friend Callie Corrington gave me this book, and her sister gave it to her. So it's actually kind of cool. In the front of the book, it's like one of those you want to pass on. And so everybody's written in there when they got it and stuff. So I've started reading it. Then another book that I really enjoy, it's called Cowgirl Prayers. My former hauling partner, Katie Chisholm, she put it's a daily devotion, and it's so applicable. It reminds me so much of like a Jesus Calling book, but for cowgirls. And so Cowgirl Prayers is another one that's a daily read for me.
I am going to have to check that out. That sounds very interesting to me. All right. So the next question is sagebrush or blue stem?
I'm going to say blue stem.
Finally get
She's
someone.
been waiting.
Yes.
I was like, it's going to be this one, Kinsey.
Well, a lot of our guests are out west. And so I'm like, finally, I get someone who gets it.
Yes.
Okay. What is your favorite part of being a rancher?
My favorite part is really just nothing about our life is simple, but in the same breath, everything is simpler. Like, it's like the choice to live a simple life, but no, you're going to work so hard to have a simple life. And, because I get to do that alongside my husband, it's so incredibly special. And I don't know that you can really make people understand that until they experience it for themselves. But yeah, it's really just the desire to live a really simple life that's full of meaning. So
I love that answer. It's so true.
Okay, what is one thing you have on your bucket list?
So I would love for our family to to do some traveling. It's hard for us to get away, with cattle and all the things, but I'd like to be able to take, before our boys graduate, I would like for us to be able to see as many states as possible. I'm not going to say all 50 states. That would be, that'd be awesome if we could, but I would love to like road trip. Our boys are really good travelers. They love to road trip. Thank goodness. And so just to go and see as many states as we possibly could and have experiences there before they are grown and out of the house. So
that's so fun. One of my husband's dreams is to have an RV and be one of those RV dads and drive us around.
Nice.
Okay, very important question for a cattle rancher. What is your favorite steak cut and how do you like it cooked?
A filet, bacon wrapped filet, preferably in medium rare.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Dang, I'm so hungry now.
I know.
It's lunchtime. All right. What is your favorite wildflower?
I don't even know. I mean, I feel like it's just a weed. But my boys, the reason it's my favorite is because my boys are so into like picking mom, flowers. And actually, I'll say it's not a wildflower. It's just clover. Like literally this week, they brought me like handfuls of clover, and they were just like a bouquet. Like it wasn't just the one flower to put behind your ear. And so I'm gonna go with clover as my favorite wildflower. So
That's cute.
Okay, log cabin or old farmhouse?
Old farmhouse.
All right. What is your favorite recipe or meal to make?
My favorite to like make is probably spaghetti, just because I know that our house, like it's beef, it's easy. Our kids eat it and it's so, quick and easy to make. So it's probably my favorite to make. Make a good salad to go with it, some bread. Like I'm all about spaghetti. But as far as like to eat, anything, like any type of Mexican food, like taco salad, quesadillas, whatever. Like if I'm not gonna have a steak, then take me for Mexican. That anything Mexican. I've never met a chip I didn't like. How about that?
Yeah.
Feel you on that one.
Chips and queso and salsa is like its own food group.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
If
and you can
tries
never
to tell
get
you
sick
otherwise, yeah, don't trust them if they tell you otherwise. So.
Okay, have you ever had an animal that had a big impact on your life or was particularly memorable?
Yeah, I had a horse named Tango. He was the first horse I ever bought with like money from working, through the summer, and sold another horse. And he got hurt not 6 weeks after I bought him. And so it was one of those deals where, nursed him back to health, and ended up losing him to colic whenever I was a senior in high school. But that horse, I learned so much, with him in such a short amount of time, and just about, how to become a better horsewoman. I just really had to work through a lot of things because he was like that next step up horse. But then I spent so much time with him, like, rode him bareback, and like he just was that horse when you're in middle school, like you're just best friend. And so I just have that I'd like to think everybody gets that one horse, in their life. And so Tango was that one horse for me. And fun fact, Miss Nelda, my mom's friend, had told us about this horse and another one. And I can't believe my mom even let me bring Tango home, because we drove to Georgia to try these two horses. These people lived in a subdivision, like with a pretty stable. I was like, the one horse I didn't like at all. And then Tango was dead lame. And my mom let me bring a dead lame horse back home. And he wouldn't even pass a vet check, because we kept him for like 2 weeks and he was still lame. She was like, it's your money, but I did. I bought a lame horse. He ended up being fine later, before he got hurt in the fence. But like, I just think when and I knew he was my horse, and I made a lot of really special memories with him. And I'm really glad that my mom didn't like say, no, you can't spend your money on that, because I just knew.
Oh, that's so special. Share one random fact about you.
I was in a really, great position when I was Miss Rodeo USA to, have the ears of people, in the rodeo industry and the IPRA particularly, and got to really rally around them adding the Cowgirls breakaway roping as an official event at the International Finals Rodeo, and so that's something that I'll always hold, that opportunity near and dear to my heart, because I think people sometimes think, oh, just a rodeo queen. And it really gave me an opportunity to step into that position and be a voice for the contestants, and watching where the breakaway ropings went now, not because of me, but like that I got to play a small role in that. And it's just really special because there were so many women and men that were doing that before I came onto the scene to do it. But yeah, that, I guess that's a random fact that I got to have a hand in that, and I qualified for the very first IFR that they had the breakaway roping at. So I crowned a new girl one January, and then the next year I came back and I got to back in the box and placed in the average, and so that was just pretty special.
It's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just have to touch on that because, I sometimes the rodeo queens get a bad rap. They're like, oh my gosh, these girls that can't even ride the horse or whatever. But that's not actually the case. And we do a lot more than people realize, like we do an important job, and we do a lot as far as like connecting the athletes with the audience, with the committee, we are kind of like, I feel like the rodeo queens are kind of like so important in connecting everyone. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We are so excited. I'm really excited for everyone to hear this one. This is probably one of my favorite episodes that we've done. So thanks for being on.
Yeah. Thank you, ladies. I sure appreciate it. It's been fun, and I'll just be cheering and praying you on from afar. You'll keep after it.
Thank you, Dakota. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.